What is yours?
Honorable Principal, dear students, staff, ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Chicago. It is indeed a special honor and privilege for me to be able to talk to you at this special event organized by students. I'm quite impressed with the task you have undertaken, the conversations you had, and the topics you have discussed. For a young group of students, this is a remarkable initiative and equally remarkable accomplishment. So my compliments to you all. I hope you have had a very meaningful learning experience in the process. I want to add a little bit to what you all have been discussing. I've seen the topics you have discussed, and these are all very important topics. I would like to comment on many of these topics. Some I know little more than the others, and I'm sure you all have had a detailed discussions on these topics. I have recently written a book called Redesign the World. This book basically addresses the kind of issues you have discussed. When you go into a topic like UN Security Council or issues and challenges in India, or the problems related to a specific topic, it is important to remember the root cause of these challenges. Sometimes we begin to address challenges without understanding the deep journey that we all had to take to get to that level. So while locked up at home during Corona crisis in the last year and a half, I decided to review my own life and my own journey. Try to map that journey with the journey of the technology that I have been involved in, mainly IT, telecom, software, and all that. And also journey of the world and journey of India. When I started analyzing these things, I realized that the world was last designed just about the time I was born. I was born in 1942. I'm about 80 years old. And at that time, world was designed by a group of people led by US, which ultimately gave birth to UN, World Bank, IMF, NATO, WTO, WHO, GDP, GNP, per capita income, balance of payment, trade deficit, all of these things that we follow today were laid out about 80 years ago. This system, called rule-based system, initiated by US, was designed at the time when world was bipolar. You had Soviet Union and you had US. This design has served us well. It has improved longevity, decreased infant mortality, improved education, lifted millions out of poverty, maintained peace, and we never had Third World War. So lots of good things have happened because of that design. But at the same time, the design hasn't solved the challenges related to poverty, hunger, terror, violence, and in the process, we have messed up our environment completely. Global warming is a classical example. So when I look at the situation today, I see 7 main events that really were responsible to really force us to look at the new design. One, decolonization. The entire world got decolonized in a short span of time, mainly because of the independence movement led by Mahatma Gandhi and independence of India vis-a-vis end of British Raj. Second was rise of China. No one thought China would rise the way China has been able to rise in the last 30 years. Then fall of Soviet Union. Rise of technology. Technology has become pervasive. When I came to America 57 years ago, I had never used telephone in my life. I had never seen television. I had never opened refrigerator because these kinds of technologies were not accessible to ordinary people at that point in time. Today, technology has been democratized. In the process, inequality has increased. Very few people have lots of money and lots of people don't have much. Then came 9/11, attack on America, which started redefining America. And finally, COVID-19 put entire world on halt. COVID-19 tells me that we are all interconnected, interwoven, interdependent, and interrelated. What happens in one part of the world affects everybody. And the boundaries that we have created in terms of nation have very little meaning. Today, we can connect like this at no cost because of digital facilities. So we are defining a whole new world called digital nationality. What does it mean to live in America, work in India, work in Mexico, travel all over the world, and feel like a global citizen? So when I started analyzing these things, because of COVID-19, I believe that we need to redesign the world. And we need to redesign the world because of hyperconnectivity. For the first time in the human history, we are all connected. Never happened before in the human history. What does this connectivity mean to human civilization? Is it about watching cricket and Bollywood songs and spreading gossip and lies? Or is it about taking human civilization to the next level? How do you do that? Do we use hyperconnectivity to do the same things we have been doing in the past? Or we use hyperconnectivity to do things we have never done before? So hyperconnectivity is at the core of a need to redesign the world. So we cannot solve these problems, according to me, in the present design. If we want to solve all these big problems that you are talking about, we need to redesign the system. You cannot look at in terms of GDP, GNP, per capita income, women's right, human rights, and all this stuff in present framework, because present framework is completely obsolete. And that is the book all about. So at the end of the day, there are only two things that matter. One, planet, and two, people. People need planet. Planet does not need people. Planet can survive without people. because there are many forms of life. So first, we need to take care of our planet to take care of ourselves. That means environment, global warming, air, water, pollution, ocean, fish, animals, birds, bees. We must focus on taking care of our planet to ultimately take care of us. That's a larger challenge. When you see a mountain of plastic in ocean, you realize the impact of that on our life. When you see burning forests, excess flood, you realize the impact of all that on all of us. Second is people. We are all same, no matter where we come from, what we look like, what religion we follow. So the idea that we have today of dividing people based on race, religion, color, gender is obsolete. So the old design was based on 5 fundamental issues: democracy, human rights, capitalism, consumption, and military. As I said, then world was bipolar. Then when Soviet Union fell apart, world became unipolar. Today, world has 2 designs. One is the American design of the world, which is to continue the design they had. And the second is Chinese design. China is a new power, and Chinese have their own design based on Belt and Road Initiative. What I'm proposing is a third design, because both of these designs are based on command and control, on some kind of power in the hands of leaders. But in a hyper-connected world, you need to use networking, flat organization architecture. And I'm proposing a third design, which is more based on collaboration, cooperation, co-creation, and coordination. What does this design mean? When you look at world today, we find that the democracy is being hijacked. What is going on in India is of great concern to me. Institutions are being captured, media, judiciary, security, civil society is undermined, and scientific mindset doesn't exist. When you promote that cow urine is going to solve corona crisis, you got a problem, because you're not thinking with science in mind. So in India, when I look at situation today, I believe we need scientific mindset, logical thinking, rational approach. 2, we need broader role for civil society. And 3, we need to provide total independence to all our institutions. Today, institutions are not independent, and then you cannot have democracy. In addition, our democracy is not inclusive. When you divide society with Hindu, Muslim, Dalits, tribals, you have a serious challenge. So we need to take democracy to inclusion. Democracy is not inclusive in India. It is not inclusive in America because of Black Lives Matter. It is not inclusive anywhere. We need to take human rights. Human rights are not good enough if you can't provide human needs. Today, we live in an economy of surplus. We can provide anything to everybody, but we wind up producing only for people who can afford to buy. We spend $2 trillion a year on defense when we know we can eliminate hunger for $200 billion a year. Then we need new economy. The capitalism has really created wealth for very few and left behind millions and millions, and they remain at the bottom of the economic pyramid. So we need new definition and new economy. Then consumption is not the answer in this world. Conservation is the answer. Sustainability is the answer. And finally, I hope we have come to a point as human civilization that we can sort our differences across the table. And we don't need to build nuclear warheads to sort our differences. So we need to focus on nonviolence. So the new design says we need inclusion, new economy, sustainability, and sort of conservation, basic needs, and nonviolence. What does it mean to have new design? It means we need new institutions. Existing institutions don't work. It means we need new organizational architecture. We need new thinking. But existing leaders are parochial. They have very little interest in global issues. They serve more as a marketing people for their country. And leadership today is not of the quality that you need to change the world. So in the last chapter in the book, I talk about a new manifesto. I believe the problems we have discussed are important, but cannot be solved in the existing framework. And that's why these problems have not been solved. Because you're using old tools to solve new problems. You need new tools. And with this book, I want to begin a new global conversation on redesigning the world. I've already started lots and lots of conversations all over the world. I've probably given about 50, 60 video talks in the last couple of months. I'm talking in Bahrain next week. I'm talking in Norway week after. So I'm doing all this to create enough momentum for people at the bottom of the pyramid to ask for change. Saying that the way the world is designed, only very few capture the benefits. It's a club, a bunch of politicians and a bunch of businesses. And people are left behind discussing the issues. And this is the challenge for all of us. I'm delighted that I got an opportunity to talk to you. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I want to just plant the seeds in your mind because it is your world that needs to be redesigned. My world is over. I'm 80-year-old, so it doesn't really matter. But your world has to be redesigned, redefined. You cannot take my world and expect to solve the problems of your generation. The design you are working with is as old as I am. And that design must change. You have to ask for change. But the way the system is, they have convinced you to solve the problems with their design. Cannot be done. So until you rise and say, hey, we need to redesign the world will not be redesigned. Everybody will convince you to solve your problems in the existing framework, which says, I'm milking the system anyway. You talk about it. But if you want to change the system, you have to demand change. With this, I want to close here. Once again, compliment you all. My hearty congratulations for all the good work you do. If you get chance, if you're interested, do get the book from Amazon and read it. Because what you're discussing requires a new framework. Bottom line is, you cannot solve problems that you are discussing with the existing design. You will be discussing it, your children would be discussing the same problem. You take the list of problems you have today, 30 years from now, your children would be discussing same problems. Because the fundamentals have to change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We learned a lot from you. Thank you so much for your motivating words. Now, if you say, then can we have an interactive session with all the delegates?
Absolutely.
So delegates, can we have questions for sir? He'll be answering your questions. Yes, Ravanda, go on.
Thank you for the recognition. It's my honor to speak with him, and I'm really a huge fan of him. I've really studied everything about him. He's an Indian engineer, and he has received many awards. And so, but can I ask that when you settled in America?
I settled in America in 1964.
Sir, no offense, but I would like to ask that why you settled in America. You could stay in our country and help us to maybe reach that level we can't reach till now. I am not saying that we will not try. We'll try our best to develop our country as we love our country a lot. So why you settled in America? Just why can't you
Good
stay in our
question.
country and help us?
Good question. You know, I came to America to get a PhD in physics because I had read that President Kennedy has decided to send man onto the moon. It was romantic in 1964. I was about 23-year-old. I had a girlfriend in India, and I decided to come to America. When I came to America, my goal changed. Rather than getting PhD, which takes 7 years, I wanted to get my girlfriend here and get married. So I changed my field to electrical engineering, got a job, collected enough money, called my girlfriend, and got married. And I've been married to her for last 55 years, and that's my wife. Okay. And settled here. In those days, it was difficult to find the kind of jobs I needed in India. And then when Rajiv Gandhi became Prime Minister, I decided to come back to India and work there for 10 years. I did all of India's IT and telecom work in Rajiv Gandhi's time. I changed my nationality back to Indian from American, worked with him for 10 years, never took any salary. And then when Rajiv Gandhi died, I ran out of money. I had 2 children ready to go to college. I have a son who went to MIT and Harvard. I have a daughter who went to Michigan and London business schools. She makes movies in Hollywood. I have a son who is in Silicon Valley. And I had to come back to US to earn money because I couldn't earn in India the kind of money I needed. Then when Dr. Manmohan Singh became Prime Minister, I decided to come back again for 10 years and work on knowledge, innovations, and digital India. And then when Modi government came in, I decided to come back again. So it doesn't really matter where you are today. It is a wrong notion that you have to live in one particular space. I'm a digital citizen. I work everywhere. I work in Mexico. I have interest in Portugal. I do lots of things in Africa. Okay. So I don't believe that I'm just an Indian. Okay. I'm for humanity. Okay. If there is a group of people and if somebody who is from Africa needed more help, I will ignore Indian. Okay. Guaranteed. Because it won't matter to me what nationality you are, what religion you follow, what language you speak. It has no value to me. What is value to me is humanity. And I can do more by being global. I travel a great deal. I do maybe 6, sometimes 5 Zoom calls a day. Yesterday, I had 2 hours in Mexico. So I work with large number of people in Mexico for last year. I work with farmers on new technology and farming. So I do lots of interesting things. So yes, your perspective is right. Why not India? Why not be here? I understand your view, but I don't think that way. Okay. So thank you for the question.
Thank you so much.
Next, we'll be taking Pragya ma'am.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. I find myself really lucky to interact with you here. Sir, since you talked about the decline in democratic values in India, some leaders taking mud bath claiming that by doing this, you won't get affected by COVID, division of society on the basis of religion. So my question to you is, in Indian history, we have witnessed so many protests against the government, which have eventually resulted even in the fall of those governments. And in those times, whenever any protest used to take place, questions were raised against the government. But today we are living in an India in which at the time of any protest, the questions are asked, but not to the government, to the protesters only. We all are very familiar with the very recent examples. I won't like to name them over here. So, sir, how can we as students, as youth of this country, can raise our voice or at least support the cause of any protest against the government or any voice against such measures which are not really beneficial for the citizens of the country, but for the people sitting in the power or the corporate houses? That's my question.
Very good question. Thank you for being brave and forthright. I agree that the institutions are captured. If I speak against the government, there'll be inquiry against me. My phone will be tapped or whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay. But I have to do what I have to do because I believe in our constitution. I believe in democracy. I believe in human rights. I believe in freedom. Media does not do justice. Media will not cover me. Media has not covered the book. Okay. But if I say something, it will be twisted. It will be used against me. And that's the way media is today. Media has been bought out. Institutions have been captured. So what do? You still speak up. Don't listen to social media because it's all paid. If I say something, there'll be 500, people who will tweet against me. Who are these 500? They are all paid. So I don't pay any attention. I don't even read. Okay. You have to do what you have to do. So you as young people have to speak up. You have to convince your friends. You have to tell them what is truth and what is lie. Today, the system is such that lies sell. Mistrust is prominent. Hate is promoted. I want to focus on truth, trust, love, inclusion, diversity, democracy, freedom, human rights. These people have turned everything upside down. And all the bad guys are seen as good guys and all the good guys are seen as bad guys. People of India ultimately will have to decide. If they buy this, more power to them. If they come to their senses and understand that India's future lies in inclusion, in democracy. When I was growing up in a small little tribal village in Orissa, we were very poor. My father and mother had 8 kids, 5 sisters and 3 brothers. Right in front of us was Muslim family. Right next to it was Jain. There was Sardar family. And in the back, there was tribal Oriya. We all played together. We all ate each other's food. We all celebrated things. No one ever thought that this is different. It never occurred to us. Now, after 75 years, 80 years, shame that we first ask, what is your religion? What is your language? What do you do? The beauty of India is diversity. I love India because of the complexity, diversity, chaos, confusion. But there is love. There is freedom. You can go settle anywhere. You can eat any food. You can sing any song. You can, speak any language. What a great country to live in. And when you start dividing people, people have to resist. If you don't speak up, you will pay for it. Thank you.
Next, taking Luxembourg.
So first of all, it's an honor to meet you.
Thank you.
I
Where
have
are
a very simple question.
you? Yes. Please.
So how does it feel to be one of those people who have been establishing technology in India? And at the same time, what hopes do you have for the future of India?
I have great hope for India. I think we are going through a bad patch. In the long run, a country of young people has to flourish because we have to provide, we meaning nation, has to provide for our young people's education, health, clothing, future, jobs. So there is a lot of market already built in. We don't need to worry about global market because we are big enough as a continent. We have lots of human resource. Human resource is the key to prosperity. So I see great future for India. I also see an Indian model of development evolving. Don't look at India in terms of American model of development. Don't look at India in terms of Western values. Look at India in terms of who we are, what we can do with what we have. Okay. And that's the beauty of India. India has such a large base.
Sir,
So I believe India can flourish mainly because of the young population. Okay.
सर जल्दी करो कल सुबह पनवेल निकल रहे
Sir,
हमको
can
कह रहे हैं जल्दी करने का.
जाने मेरी जाने मन
Somebody is hacking in, but that's, I can understand. Whenever you talk against government, they would hack in.
Very true. Sir, I would request the tech support to not allow anyone else in the meeting as of now.
That's all right. Don't worry. Let them hack in. Who cares?
Yeah, snooping is, Pegasus is there, sir.
So don't worry about it. Just we have to do what we have to do.
yes, sir. Exactly.
Continue. Continue.
More questions?
So can we continue with the questions, please?
Sure.
All right. Then Cameroon, you may go on, sir.
Thank you for that designation. Sir, my question is that as we are now we are the youth of our country, and that the youth of our country is influenced in a very destructive manner, that they are not on a right path. What message do you want to give to our youth in these days so that we can make our country like proud in the world? We can make our country more unique. And sir, there is a one more question. What contribution we can make towards creating healthy religious environment?
First of all, the key to me is to build good self. We all need to first focus on changing ourselves. Don't try to change the world if you can't change yourself. Okay.
And
So I grew up in Gandhian environment as a child. Remember I was born in British Raj. After I was born, India got independence in 47. So my value system turned out to be focused all on Gandhian values: truth, trust, love, democracy, freedom, inclusion, diversity. All of these things became part of my life. Everything I did focused on this. It didn't matter what other people did. I was comfortable. Most of the people are not comfortable with themselves. They want to compare. They want to compete. They want to cheat. They want to lie. They want to take advantage of somebody. So I think my first request to young people would be to build a good self. Self that is comfortable, self that cannot be insulted by anybody, self that is collaborative, respectful, ethical, moral, disciplined, creative. All of these are important concepts. Then you try to change people around you. You change your friends, you change your family, you train your neighborhood, because things have to happen from bottom up and not top down. So sitting there, you can't change UN. But sitting there, you can change yourself, your friends, your families, and explain to them, hey, democracy is being hijacked. Hey, I don't need to distinguish between Hindu and Muslim. Treat our women with respect because they are our sisters, they are our daughters, they are our, mousies and aunties and mother and everybody. Okay. If we do that, that's a good beginning. Okay. But the same person who talks about corruption is corrupt. Same person who talks about respecting women don't respect women. So learn to first change yourself. If you change yourself, world will change. That would be my message.
Thank you, sir, for the enlightenment.
Okay, next question we'll take from Mulayam Singh Yadav.
Thank you so much, sir. Your words were, sir, so mesmerizing, and they were eye openers for all of us. Sir, my question is, sir, these days the fourth pillar of democracy is becoming a stigma on democracy. So, what is your message for those journalists who are running the agenda of the government and spreading the communal hatred?
Well, I don't have a message for them. It is for them to decide what is right and what is wrong. Okay. It is for them to worry about their values. Okay. But I would request them to look at Indian Constitution and keep that as part of their core value. Saying, are you protecting that, or you are protecting existing government or future government or past government? All of us have to really worry about the basic Constitution, which is really a great document. There are many interpretations of it. But if I have to value, I would value democracy, freedom, inclusion as part of my core value. Anybody who did something against it, I would speak up. It doesn't matter who that person is. Okay. And even if I did something wrong, and if somebody criticized it against democracy, I would correct myself. I would accept my mistake. Okay. So I think it is important to really focus on the core values embedded in our Constitution. Do you believe in it or you don't believe in it? That's it. There is nothing else. Okay. How can I distinguish other fellow human beings based on the language, religion, race, color, caste? I mean, what is it that I can't go drink water at Dalit's house or eat? I just don't get it. It never occurred to me in my lifetime. I've never asked anybody, what is your caste in my life? I take them for what they are. I love them for what they are. There are handicapped people. There are blind people. They are all human beings. You got to treat them with respect. And it comes from your heart. And those who don't respect other human beings don't deserve my respect. That's it.
Thank you so much, sir.
Next question from China.
Thank you so much for the recognition. Good evening, sir. So I have two questions. First one is that how do we as a youth of the nation cope with this intergenerational gap? Because the leaders we see right now, they belong to some other generation, and we do not have many young leaders here in India. I mean, in books and the text we read, we have seen leaders who became very influential from a very young age. But right now, we don't have many such leaders. And the problem is we can't see the world with their perspective, and they are not willing to see the world with the perspective youth wants them. And the second question, as you were telling us about that, how you are strictly against untouchability, but that doesn't mean it does not exist. It still exists in India, and the economic unbalanced economic development, which were the two causes why we have reservation in the country. The problems are still here. Do you feel reservation is actually the right tool to solve the problem, or is it just an unnecessary fiasco that we made?
Okay. So first question, answer would be that we need intergenerational dialogue. We need more dialogue between young people and older people. Today, older people talk to themselves, younger people talk to themselves. So unless and until we have more of these conversations, where 80-year-old talks to 20-year-old, 15-year-old, we cannot understand each other. Okay. That's one. Second, of course, there is caste system in India. Of course, there is discrimination against blacks in America. Of course, there is discrimination against Mexicans in America, Latinos in America. Of course, there is discrimination against Arabs in Europe. So I think the world is full of inequalities. We all understand that. Reservation is a complex issue. I believe in it to some extent. There is reservation in America for blacks, preferences, incentives, because you're going to lift that community. And to lift that community, you have to do something. You cannot use the yardstick of efficiency, productivity, everywhere. That equation doesn't work everywhere. Okay. So you have to balance it. Okay. Reservation does not imply promoting incompetence. No, it implies giving opportunities. And in the process, some incompetence is promoted. That's part of the package. So you have to understand the differences. If you believe that you need to lift people who are underprivileged, you got to do something extra. Somebody has to give. Today, if we want equality in the world, rich countries will have to give. Okay, they don't like to give. So inequality will continue. Okay. So I think you have to understand larger problem. What happens is people take one little narrow thing and think they understand the issue. Okay. And that's why this whole idea of redesigning. Because the basic platform is obsolete. When I look at world today, I believe everything we do today is basically obsolete. Who decided it should take 4 years to get a degree? You tell me. Why does it take 4 years to get a degree everywhere in the world? China takes 4 years, America takes 4 years, India takes 4 years. I'm going to challenge that. I'm going to say that's bogus. Okay. So what do I want education to be? I'm going to change fundamentals. I want education to empower a person, and I want to make somebody a self-learner. I want you to be a self-learner by the time you're 16, and then you decide what you want to do. We don't make people self-learner. Okay, we tell them what we want them to learn. Funny thing, you're 16-year-old and I'll tell you what you have to learn in science. You will have no option. Okay. So that education has to change. Health system has to change. Governance has to change. Why do you need a Ministry of Shipping? I don't get it. Ministry of Steel. Come on. Okay. So everything we do today is basically obsolete. Now you start from that. Okay. So that's a whole new way of looking at it. Thank you.
All right, sir. Thank you so much.
All right. So we'll be moving on to the last question from sir. Mr. Chief Advisor, sir, you may go on.
Yeah. Good evening, sir. Good evening from India. Yeah. So, sir, basically, I want to get a snippet out from you. That is, we have seen, many of us have seen the movie that was The Accidental Prime Minister. Even if you might have heard about it, or if you have watched it.
I don't see movies.
You don't see movies. So it was just basically about the PMO at that point of time. But I want to hear from someone who was there at the PMO during Dr. Singh's time. How was the PMO at that point of time? I just want to know about that.
Let me tell you, Dr. Manmohan Singh was a divine human being. He was a gentleman, learned, humble, simple. Everything people tell you in the media about him is very different. We had a good chemistry. I went to him many times. And every time I went, he and I would sit there. First thing he would say, Sam, how are you? How is the family? We'll have tea together. We never talked about any major conflicts. He listened carefully. He always helped. He is the kind of prime minister India would need. Wise man. Man who will allow people space to do their things and not say, I know everything and I have all the answers. I'm going to tell you what is perfect. Okay. And then turn around and say exactly opposite. Manmohan Singh never said what he didn't believe in it. Okay. He meant what he said and he said what he meant. Okay. People don't do that. I can tell you, Prime Minister of a country like India has to be a cheerleader, has to be coordinator, communicator, collaborator, co-creator. Country is too complex. All you can do is heal the wounds of everybody by listening, learning, supporting, and not pour in kerosene on their wounds. Okay. So it's a very different way of looking at it.
So I would like to end this with just a quote from Dr. Singh himself. That was, media, the country would be kinder to me than the history would be kinder to me than the media. That is one of his most established.
Doesn't have to
quotes.
be. I don't think it doesn't have to be. Okay. Because people who know him know it.
True.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those who report in media are not the people.
Very
Okay. So what difference does it make? As far as I'm concerned, doesn't make any difference. Let them say whatever they want to say. We know who he was. We know his contribution. We know the character he brought to the table. I'll give you one simple example as a closing remark. Okay. And then I want to say a few more things later on. You know, I met once a finance minister of UK. He had met Dr. Manmohan Singh. And he said, you know, Sam, when I met the man, for the first time in my life, I felt I'm meeting God. He said he was wearing white dress, man with peace, totally comfortable, humble, simple. And he said, I didn't realize that I'm not meeting Prime Minister. I'm meeting some divine human being. That is how people felt in their heart when they met Manmohan Singh. But then media will say, oh, he was like this, he was like that, or he didn't do this, he didn't do that. It doesn't matter. They can say whatever they want to say. Why pay attention? You see, we pay too much attention to what is written in social media. One of the things I learned in my life, I never read anything written on me. I don't care. If somebody writes a story on me, I don't read it. I'm done. I give an interview, I'm done. You can write whatever you want to write. Okay, that's your job. Because why should I color my thinking based on what you think? I know what I want to do. I'm very clear. Okay. Not that I'm right all the time. Don't get me wrong. I also have a lot to learn. But not from reading about me. Okay. So finally, I would like to again thank you all. Thank the principal for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Aditya, for organizing logistics and all. Thank all the students for asking brilliant questions. My request would be, if you like this conversation, Go promote it. Tell other young students the kind of conversation we had. Change yourself, do a little bit of soul searching, and stand up for the right cause. I wish you all the best and hope we reconnect again some point in time. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.